back to my channel. As you can see, according to all of these palettes that we have right here, today's video is going to be basically my eyeshadow palettes declutter. As you can see, I have a lot of palettes and it's becoming very overwhelming, and honestly said, as much as I love the idea of having this many palettes, I do not use every single one of them, so we're just going to go one by one through them. I'm going to explain to you which ones I'm keeping and why, maybe show you some swatches, and also which ones I'm not keeping and why, and probably there'll be some maybes as well, and then on the end I'm going to show you how much I'm decluttering and how much I'm keeping. So let's roll into the first palette. So the first palette that we're going to be talking about is the Makeup Revolution Neutrals versus Neutrals palette. This is what the palette looks like. It's my favourite types of eyeshadows, especially during summer and autumn. It's good quality eyeshadows. I like the pinks and I like the shimmers. I don't really use these dark ones, but it's very affordable and I do like this eyeshadow palette, so I'm definitely going to be keeping it. I don't really think I need to show you much of swatches, but if you want, this is one of the examples if you can see it. And yeah, there's not much else I can say about this palette other than that I like it, I recommend it, and I'm going to be keeping it. And the next palette that I'm going to be talking to you about is another Makeup Revolution palette, and this is the Affirmation palette. I don't really like this palette. I don't really like the Makeup Revolution palettes that have the circular pans in them. I don't think the eyeshadows are as strong as the rectangle pans in their eyeshadow palette. They're okay, but now that I've discovered better palettes in Makeup Revolution, I don't really want to be keeping this one, and I think someone else can make better use out of it, so I'm going to be getting rid of this one. The next palette that I want to talk to you about is the Makeup Revolution Flawless 3 Resurrection palette, which looks like this. And again, I like the shade selection, and again the shadows are good, but they're not the best from Makeup Revolution. And considering that all of these shadows I already have in palette that I'm already keeping from Makeup Revolution, I am also going to be passing along this one to family or friends or whoever if I haven't mentioned that already. So this one's passed as well. This next palette is again Makeup Revolution. Basically every palette that I'm going to be talking about, unless I tell you it's a different brand, is basically Makeup Revolution. And this is the Ultimate Color Chaos palette, and it looks like this on the inside. I like these shades. They're not the most pigmented, but they get the job done eventually. As you can, I'll show you a swatch of this. I'll take this colour. As you can see, it is buildable and some of the shades are pigmented, it's just some of them are not so great. But I like it, it's colourful, and I don't have that many colourful palettes in my collection that I would like to keep, so I am definitely going to keep this one. The next palette is the Love Conquers All palette, which looks like this, and this is absolutely stunning palette. I got it around Valentine's Day. I'm not sure if you can still get it. But I like it. All of the shades are beautiful. I think they are pigmented, they are blinding, and I like using it for some pink looks, especially this shade right here to me is very unique. And also this gold shade right here is pretty intense as well. So I see a lot of amazing eye looks to be done with this, and these two shades you can use as highlighters as well. So I'm definitely keeping this one. This next palette I got around Christmas time. I'm not sure again if you can get it or not already, I mean still. But this is the Life on a Dance Floor VIP palette, and I mean the packaging is absolutely beautiful. And then this is what it looks like on the inside. I love the colour selection. There are a lot of shades that I can use for everyday eye looks, for going to work and so on, but there are also shades that I can make very intense looks. And overall, I think this palette is beautiful. I've not had a great deal of playing around with it, so I'm definitely going to still be keeping it. And just for reference, I'll swatch you some shades so you can see what they look like. But I think definitely worth the money, which it wasn't that expensive either. So yeah, I'm keeping it. This next palette is a collaboration with Makeup Revolution and Soft as Nails. I absolutely adore this palette. I think it is amazing collaboration. All the shades are amazing and great. They go right up my alley. I'll show you the shades in a minute. But I'm definitely can tell you right now that I'm keeping this eyeshadow palette, and you can still get it, and I also have a review of this palette, so I'll throw it up in the cards for you. And this is what the palette looks like on the inside. As you can see, it's got a selection of shades that you can use every day, like this one that I've already hit pan on, but you've got also a selection of the colours that I personally like the pinks and purples, but also some pops of colour. And generally the eyeshadows are very intense. You can build them up, but you can also make them very subtle. I especially adore this shade right here, and I don't know, the mattes are great, the shimmers are great, and I don't really have anything else to say about this palette other than I'm keeping it and you should go out and buy it as well. These next 3 palettes are the Reloaded, from the Reloaded collection. I have 3 out of the 4, and the ones that I have is the Iconic Division, then we also have the Neutrals 2, and also what we got, Iconic Vitality. I love these eyeshadows. They are super pigmented. The shimmer shades are very pigmented and intense. This one is the dupe for the Subculture palette from Anastasia Beverly Hills that we'll talk about in a minute. I absolutely love it, and I think it is a really good duplicate of that palette. These ones are just up my alley whenever I want to do some romantic looks with pinks and reds and stuff like that. And this one is pretty good for everyday shades as well, but I have to tell you that is probably my least favourite. However, A, the collector in me, and B, just generally because I think it's good quality eyeshadows, I am going to be keeping all 3 of them. So the next 5 palettes that I want to talk to you about are from Makeup, which technically said is with Makeup Revolution, but let's just call it on brand. And I mean, the packaging of these palettes is absolutely stunning. It's beautiful, and the collector in me wants to buy out all of these palettes and more that they still have in store and just keep them forever. But realistically, have I ever touched any of these palettes? Maybe once or twice, and then I've never used them again. And I'll tell you the reasons why. So let's go palette by palette and I'll explain it to you. The first palette is called I Heart Chocolate, and it looks like this. It's very dark palette, and realistically the only everyday shade that I would ever use is this one and maybe this one and maybe this one. Okay, so 3 shades I would use every day, but even on the days when I want to make a bit more glam videos or eye looks or anything like that, I wouldn't be going for the already like dark shades like these. I don't really see much of a transition shade in there, and I don't know, it's just not great selection for me. A lot of people compare this eyeshadow palette to the Too Faced Chocolate Bar palette, and I don't see it. I own that palette and I don't really see that comparison. So personally, I am going to be getting rid of this one. The next palette is the Chocolate Love palette. I mean, you can see that there are 2 pinks in here, and everything else just to me seems all over the place. That when I look at this palette, I don't get inspired. And to be fair, in general, maybe a couple of shades are okay, and the rest are just not as pigmented. They're not as good in my opinion. I mean, I'll swatch this one and you can see just like you barely see anything in there. It's not great. It's a lot of work, and I just don't reach out for this palette at all. I've only used it for swatches, so I'm going to get rid of it. This next palette is the Chocolate and Peaches palette. A lot of people were saying when this came out that this is a perfect dupe for the Too Faced Sweet Peach palette. I disagree. Again, I own that palette and I absolutely adore my Too Faced palette, and I can get out so many looks out of it that I cannot get anywhere near with this palette. And again, the shades are not that great. They're not as pigmented. It's hard to build it up, and I just don't like this palette, and I'm going to pass it on. This is the Salted Caramel palette, and even though there are a lot of dark shades, and I do believe that these shades will probably be still hard to work with, I am more interested in this selection of the shades in this palette. And considering that I already got rid of 3 of these palettes from this collection, I am probably going to keep this one and try to make it work a bit more. There are a lot more cool tone shades in there as well. So I'm going to keep this one for now and give it a bit of a try, and then if I still don't like it, I'm probably just going to get rid of it. This is the Mint Chocolate palette, and to be fair, I think out of all the I Heart Makeup chocolate bar palettes that I owned, this is the most interesting one, and I'm definitely going to be keeping this one because it has some interesting pops of colours in here, and I do think they have done something different to the formula of this palette because, I mean, the shades are just slightly better. I mean, they're not great still, but they're a bit better, so I'm willing to work with this one as well. And again, I've not had it for so long, so I would like to give it a bit of a fair try before I decide that it isn't that great. I mean, that green is really good, so I'm going to keep it for now and decide at another time. Right, the next palette that I want to talk about, I have 3 of the Model's Own palettes. This is the first one, which is the Barely There eyeshadow palette. It looks like this. At the start, I had issue working with this palette because for the price, I expected a lot more. It is definitely up there between £15 to £20 price range. I'm not 100% sure about it. The shadows aren't the most pigmented, neither are the shimmers, or like generally the mattes or shimmers are not as great in terms of pigmentation. However, I do like the colour selection, and eventually I did learn how to use it and like it, so I think I'm going to be keeping this one. The next eyeshadow palette is the Model's Own GILT palette, which came in Christmas makeup set that my boyfriend got me. I thought I would like this palette. But turns out I don't reach out for it. The shades are my most favourite ones. I don't like this blush. I never use lipsticks that are in pans like these. And these shades are okay, but I don't think it's worth keeping the entire palette just for these 2 shades, which I'll show you what they look like. I mean, it's a nice shade, it's quite interesting, but I don't think it's worth keeping this entire palette for these 2 shades, especially for the price range, so I'm going to be passing along this. This is the final Model's Own palette, which is the Holochrome palette, and the entire concept when I was talking to the lady in the shop was that it's similar to the Urban Decay Moondust palette, which is supposed to be like glittery eyeshadows with a bit of a pigment that you put on top of some sort of eyeshadow base. Ever since I got this, I've not actually reached out for it other than swatches. I mean, this is what it looks like. It is very nice, but it isn't glittery enough for me to actually use it for glitter purposes, so then it just becomes an extra step for me that I do not want to do. So I'm just going to be passing this one along as well. The next palette is the Juvia's Place, the Nubian 2 palette. Got this from Beauty Bay, and it was pretty affordable for the pigmentation of the shadows and for the size of it. And if I open it up, it looks like this on the inside. I really do like these shadows. I wish I chose a different palette in terms of shade selection, but I do want to keep this palette purely because of this blue colour. I think that it is absolutely stunning in terms of pigmentation, and generally everyone obsesses about these palettes, and I do like them. So I think it's special enough for me to keep it for a few of these colours. I'm definitely keeping it. This next palette is by Zoeva, and it is the Cocoa Blend palette. I mean, everybody on YouTube talked about this palette at some point in their channel life. So that's why I basically got this palette, and to be honest, I don't ever reach for it. I find this palette to be hard to work with. I find these shimmer shades to not be as pigmented when you're trying to pack them onto the eyelid, and I never touch any of these 4 shades. So I mean, it is a nice palette and it's very sleek and great, but I don't think I should be keeping it just for the sake of everyone talks about it on YouTube, everyone owns it and everyone likes it. I mean, this pink shade is beautiful, I do have to admit that, but nowadays I can find this shade in some of my other Makeup Revolution palettes, so it's not worth keeping this entire palette for just that 1 shade considering the quality of the eyeshadows. So I'm passing this one along. The next 3 palettes I want to talk about are the Anastasia Beverly Hills palette, and I've got Modern Renaissance, Subculture and Prism palette. First of all, let's talk about the Modern Renaissance. Oh, by the way, one more thing to add before I start talking about each and one of these palettes is, beforehand, I'm going to tell you that I am definitely keeping all 3 of these. I mean, they're expensive palettes, and even though I might not be using Subculture as much, I want to collect them, and I also want to keep Subculture for reference points, such as comparing it to the Makeup Revolution Reloaded palette. So let's just talk about individual palette. This is what my Modern Renaissance looks like. I think it is an okay palette, but I mean, I think it was a bit too hyped out. But to be fair, at the time this came out, there weren't that many palettes with these shade selections. So, I mean, obviously that's why everyone loved it. But I mean, considering that nowadays every second brand has now its own take on this style of a palette in terms of shade selection. I don't think you have to run out and get this palette anymore. It's okay, but as you can see, it's not a palette that I've hit pan on yet, and I've had it for a couple of years now. So, I mean, I wouldn't recommend you run out and buy it, but I mean, it is an okay palette, so I'm keeping it. This is what the Xoxo palette looks like. Before this palette actually came out, everyone was super excited for it because the shade selection is very unique. There's not that many palettes at the time that had this kind of shade selection. To me, it was quite inspiring palette, but as we all know now, this palette was a big failure in terms of it being too powdery, it being too pigmented to the point when it was impossible to blend it. It was getting really patchy. These shades weren't that pigmented, and they were getting seals over them. So I mean, I'm keeping this palette for reference points, and I do have a video on how you can try and make this palette work, so I'll throw that in the cards. But other than that, I mean, I wouldn't recommend you go and buy it even nowadays, really, unless you're a collector like me and wants to own all the palettes. Now, this last palette is the Prism palette, and I absolutely love it. I think it is so much better than the Subculture palette or the Modern Renaissance palette in terms of shade selection and uniqueness. I think it is worth the £43 that you pay for it on Beauty Bay. And I'll show you some swatches, but it is pigmented, it is really good, it's easy to work with, and it isn't that powdery. I mean, some shades have a little bit of kickback, but other than that, I do like it. And even though I've not been playing around with it too much, I think it is a very inspiring palette, and I am happy about this. And out of the 3 of them, well, 4 of them now, I would recommend this one the most. And soon enough you'll be seeing also the new palette, the Soft Glam, in my collection. I'm just saving up money for it, but I'm keeping this one. Now, this is the Jeffree Star Androgyny palette. I got this because I like this more than the Beauty Killer palette, and I wanted to try out his eyeshadow quality. And I've got a video on this palette as well, so I'll throw that in the cards for you as well, just in case you're interested to see my opinions and like a full-on review on it. But I am going to be keeping this palette because A, it was expensive, and B, I actually do like this palette, even though I don't use it as often as I probably should. I love this shade because you not only can use it obviously on your eyes, but you can use it as a contour shade. I like these pops of colours, and even though there isn't a massive selected range of eye looks that you can do with it, I still do think that it is a great palette for the money as well. And I mean, all the shades are really nice. They're pigmented, they're easy to blend, they last a long time. So I mean, I do want to keep it and make the most out of it for the money that I've put in it, so I'm definitely keeping it. Next palette that I'm going to talk to you about is the Shaaanxo and BH Cosmetics collaboration, which one side is eyeshadows and the other side is lipsticks. As you can probably tell, I don't use lipsticks from pans like these. I don't find it really hygienic or very convenient on that, I don't find it really convenient either, so I've never really used this other than swatching. And then this side, which is the eyeshadows, the selection of the eyeshadows is nice. I just don't reach out for this. These are not the shadows that I would reach out for on an everyday basis, and colours like this one right here I can find basically in other palettes. So for example, the eyeshadow palette from Makeup Revolution and Stuff Does Nails. And I mean, worst case scenario, I might depot this particular eyeshadow because it is a bit more unique than the other one. But other than that, everything else I don't use, and I can find a different palette. So I'm going to be getting rid of this one, but figuring out a way of depotting this one before I get rid of it. So these 4 palettes, I'm probably going to be getting rid of all of them. I'm going to talk to you one by one about them. This is the NYX Adorable palette. My boyfriend got me this one, which, bless him, I mean, I really liked it. Like the fact that he went out and bought me this, but I mean, this palette is bad. Like, it's not his fault, it's just the eyeshadow quality of this is really bad. It's powdery, it's barely pigmented, the shimmer shades are basically non-existent, and I just don't think that this palette was worth the money that he had to pay for it. so I'm going to be getting rid of this one. This is a palette by Technique and it's their bronze palette, and I mean the shades aren't the worst shades in the world. They are quite pigmented, to be fair, but I don't ever reach for this palette. I have these colours in different palettes and I don't think it's fair for me to keep this just because it's nice but I don't use it, so I'm going to be passing this one along as well. This is a random palette by Revlon. It's the Photoready palette 501 Metropolitan, and when you open it up, which that's what it looks like, it comes with these things which I never use. All of these shades are not that great other than this golden glittery shade, and considering that it is the smallest shade of the entire like mini palette or whatever you want to call this, I don't think it's fair for me to keep this entire thing for just that shade, which I don't reach out for anyway because I like to reach out for palettes that include everything that I need in them. So I am going to be getting rid of this one as well. The next palette is by Maybelline and it is the Blushed Nude palette. And I mean, I've used this palette before and it is a good palette. It is super powdery, but it is good in terms of you can make it work. But I can find all of these shades in all of my different palettes that I own already, so I don't think there is any need for me to try and force myself to like this palette and make it work. But I don't know, I don't think you should go out and buy Maybelline palettes anyway, because I don't find them to be really good quality and they cost sometimes more than Makeup Revolution palettes do, so I don't know, that's my opinion on that and I'm not keeping it. The next two palettes I want to talk about is by Sleek Makeup, and the first one is this tiny little palette, which when I was buying this gift set which came with this palette and eyeliner and lipstick, I definitely thought that this palette would be a lot bigger than what it is. And to be fair, even if these shades would be good, which I don't think they are so small that I am not even willing to try and fit my brush in there. So I'm going to be passing this one along. And this bigger palette is in the shade Divine. It looks like this, and I mean the shades aren't the worst quality in the world, but they aren't the best, and I don't generally know what I was thinking with this palette. I think I was just attracted to this blue purpley one, which I can find in different palettes that I own, so I don't think it's worth for me to keep this palette. I've never reached for it other than swatches, so I'm going to be passing that along as well. The next two palettes I want to talk about are by Too Faced, and I'm definitely going to be keeping the Too Faced Sweet Peach palette. This was one of the first high-end palettes I ever got, and I generally absolutely love this palette. I love most of the shades in this palette. I use them almost every time I pull out this palette into my everyday makeup bag. The shadows are beautiful, they blend well, they're pigmented, and it smells like peaches, which is added bonus. And I just love this palette and I'm never ever letting this go, so I'm keeping it. And this other palette, which is the Too Faced Chocolate Bar palette, the original one, I only got it recently, but I mean, I've not had a great deal of time to play around with this palette, but it does have shades that I could use for everyday use. The shades are very pigmented and they're easy to work with in my opinion, so I'm definitely going to be hanging on to this palette because I want more time to play with it. And generally the time that I spend with this palette I liked so far, so I'm keeping it. Next palette that I want to talk about is this Urban Decay Moondust palette. I absolutely love the packaging of this palette first of all, and it wasn't one of the most expensive palettes I've ever bought. This is what the palette looks like on the inside, and this is why I'm not keeping the Holochrome palette from Model's Own, because these shadows are everything that I need in terms of putting an additional step to my eye look. I absolutely love these shades. I think they are super glittery but pigmented as well, and I don't really have anything to fault with this eyeshadow palette. I think it's beautiful. I think it's worth the money, and especially if you like glitter, so I'm definitely keeping this one. This is Magnetic palette from Freedom, and I have bunch of eyeshadows in here on this side, and then one repressed highlighter which me and my boyfriend did together, which was basically a little bit of every single highlighter that I own, and then we just repressed it. But we're concentrating on the eyeshadow part of today. These two eyeshadows are from Freedom. I don't really reach out for them, but it's good to have a single form of these shadows, so I'm keeping them, and so is this one actually. And then this one is from Bleach, and as well as this one, Bleach London. and I really like this particular shade, which is like a pressed glitter. It is really, really, really nice and shiny and beautiful. And then I've not really played around with this shade just yet, but I mean it looks beautiful as well, so I'm keeping those. And this is the only Makeup Geek shadow that I own, which is in the shade Typhoon. And again, it is really nice. I've just not had the chance to utilise it in my eye looks, but I would love to, so I am keeping every single one of these. This next eyeshadow palette is actually a palette that I built myself. It's from Essence, and you can buy this in the UK in like Wilko's. Every single one of these shades is shade that I chose myself from a selection of loads of shades that they have. I like the quality of the shades. They're not the best in terms of they are quite powdery and chalky, but once you put it on the eyes, they last pretty long time and they are pretty pigmented. I want to keep every single one of these, and I eventually actually make a video about these, and they are super affordable. I'm pretty sure each shade was like £1 or £2, so I mean it's easy for you to build eyeshadow palette of your dreams in terms of what you use and what you would use. So I like it, and that's why I'm keeping it. Now I'm going to move on to, for a change, to my individual things. So first of all, I have the Maybelline Colour Tattoo 24-hour colour tattoo, and I have the shade Pink Gold and On Bronze. I do like these. I'm just not sure if they're still usable, to be fair. But I mean, this one seemed fine. It was dried on the beginning, but it seems fine now. So I'm probably going to keep that one for sure because I like it. And then this one, which is the Pink Gold. I'm not sure again if it hasn't dried out completely. No, it hasn't. It's still usable, still creamy. So I'm going to keep this one as well. These are great for your eyeshadow basis. They are quite affordable, but I don't reach for them as often as I probably should. So I'm going to put them in my project pan and hope to use them more often. The next things I want to talk about is are these Barry M glitters. I have one in the shade 22, 7, 15, 4 and 108, and I love these glitters. I'm not going to give you swatches of it because that gets quite messy and my boyfriend hates glitter, but I love them. They're good for the price, and I don't want to get rid of these because those and these two pots are the only glitters that I own, so I'm going to keep all 5 of them. These 2 pots are from Model's Own like glitter set that they had around the summertime. This is in the shade Pluto, and this is in the shade Mars. I liked both of these. I prefer this one over these ones because they're harder to get off, but overall I like them and they're really good for festival looks. This is a little pot of eye dust or something like that I got from a makeup subscription box, and it's brand Mask or something like that, and it doesn't really have a shade on it, but I think it's something in the lines of vanilla. And even though it looks really nice and it would be actually a really good highlight as well, I don't actually use this. So I mean, I don't think it's good for me to keep it when I don't use it and someone else can make the most out of it. So I am going to pass this one along. This next eyeshadow is a single eyeshadow from MUA, and it is in the shade Copper, and I only recently got this one, so I'm not going to be passing it along, but it is pretty intense shade right there, so I am going to keep it. These last 2 are cream eyeshadows from Model's Own. I own the colour Copper Luster and the colour Vintage Pink. I much prefer the Copper Luster over Vintage Pink. They are quite pricey cream eyeshadows. They're like cream foils or whatever. So I am debating on whether to keep the pink one, and most likely I am just going to keep the Copper Luster and get rid of the Vintage Pink. These 2 palettes are from Makeup Obsession, and again they are make your own palettes type style, and so are all these shadows from Makeup Obsession. They're about £2 each. I built these palettes myself, and there are some shadows that I like over some that I don't, but I don't feel like picking through them right now and choosing which ones I do and which ones I don't. But overall, I can tell you that they are all really good quality apart from this pink one, pinky peach one. They are really pigmented. I've got a video using a couple of these shadows right here, so I'll leave that in the cards if I can. And if you buy a smaller palette, which you can, which is like 6 slots, you can make again your perfect palette for quite affordable price. So I'm going to keep these for now, but next year when I'll do declutter, if I still haven't touched these eyeshadows, then I'll definitely declutter them then. This big palette is by Technique and I got it for Christmas. It's a nice palette. It's just the shadows aren't the greatest of the, like, they're not the best of the quality. That's one thing. Second thing, I don't really like reaching out for big palettes like these, and especially when the pans are quite small. I mean, they're okay quality, but I don't really reach out for the palettes like this anyway. And this row right here is full of lipsticks, which, as you know by now through this video, I don't use those. And we've got a couple of blushes and highlighters and bronzers, which I would never touch. So overall, it makes sense for me to just declutter this palette and give it to someone who will utilise all of these shades, or most of these shades, to the best of their ability, rather than for this palette to sit in my collection. Next palette is by BH Cosmetics, and it is their Foil Eyes 28 colour eyeshadow palette. And I got this off Beauty Bay, and I really like this palette. The quality of the shimmers is really good. I mean, this is all just shimmer colours. It's really good, and it goes well with the combination of my Makeup Revolution Colour Chaos palette. So I'm definitely going to be keeping it, and for the price, it's definitely worth the money. And you're getting some really colourful shades out of it, and also shades that you can use every day, not just like really colourful ones. So I think it is worth the money, and I'm keeping it. This last palette is by Morphe, and it is their 35p, which is basically the purple eyeshadow palette. This was one of the first like more serious palettes that I got from my boyfriend, and I feel bad to say this, but I don't reach out for this palette. I am 90% sure it causes me an eye irritation in the first place. And also, the only shades that I could really use on an everyday basis are these 3 shades right here, maybe pull off this one as well. Everything else is around the same colour scheme, like around, like these 2 shades look the same to me, these 2 shades look the same to me. I mean, the quality is there, it's okay. And like this shimmer right here is really good as well. Bit chalky, but good. But I don't think I should keep it for a couple of shades. And this shade right here, I don't understand. It's supposed to be like glitter, but once you rub it in, you can't see any glitter and it's just black. So I mean, it is a good price, it's a nice palette, but considering that I've moved away from these shades anyway, I think it's fair now to pass it along to someone else. So I'm not keeping this anymore. And this, guys, concludes the video. All of these palettes that you see right here are the palettes that I'm keeping. It's about over 20 eyeshadow palettes, and then some singles as well that I'm not gonna count right now. And then in this basket right here, as you can see, that's all the palettes that I am going to be decluttering, which means passing along to my friends and family, especially my cousin and my little sister. And yeah, in here we have about 19 palettes, so I think that's a great success. It breaks my heart to get rid of this, but it's a good thing because someone else can make the most out of these palettes. Here's a closer shot for you to see how much I'm getting rid of. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it was fun for you to watch. Don't forget to check out the videos that I referred to during this entire video, and you can find them in the cards. And other than that, like this video, subscribe if you like me and my personality and the videos that I make, and I'll talk to you in my next video. Bye!